Unit 1, Part 4. So we've just started to talk about how we're going to explicate our understanding of a valid argument, one where it's not possible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false, how we're going to explicate that idea of impossibility or the necessity, and if the premise is true, it's necessarily the case the conclusion is also true. We're going to explicate that through the notion of form. So let me read you from a crucial passage from page 9 of Klenk, where she has at the top of the page two examples identical in structure to my own. Now, what can it mean to say that in the second example, like our one here, it is possible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false, when in fact the conclusion is true? Right? Dan is Australian. And what could it mean in the first example, like this one, to say that if both the premises were true, the conclusion would be true as well, when in fact both premises and conclusion are false? Right? Furthermore, how can we ever be sure in a valid argument that there could be no possible way for the premises to be true and the conclusion false? How could we ever prove such a thing? Those questions will be with us until Unit 5. The first part of the course, Units 1 to 6, Exam 1 is on Units 1 to 6, is learning to answer that question, right? In Unit 5 is called the truth table test of the validity of an argument form. Only when we get to Unit 5 will we be able to actually show how an argument form has no counterexamples, or how it's the first. Only Unit 5 will be able to show of a valid argument form that, in fact, it is not possible for it to have true premises and a false conclusion. Okay, we have to go through the concepts of truth functionality, sentential operators, and all sorts of stuff, which we'll be doing on the way to Unit 5. But Unit 5 will be the climax of the first part of the course, where you get to answer that question. Carrying on, this next paragraph, second full paragraph on 9, is really the crucial one. Make sure you understand it going forward. The answer to all these questions lies in the concept of form or structure. To say that an argument could not possibly have true premises with a false conclusion is simply to say that it has a certain kind of form, a form that admits no instances of that sort. To say that it could have true premises with a false conclusion, on the other hand, is to say that the argument has a form for which there are other possible instances that do have true premises with a false conclusion. It cannot be emphasized enough, then, that it is the form of an argument that determines its logical validity, and symbolic logic turns out to be primarily a study of the abstract forms or structures used in argumentation. What then is logical form? She goes on. Okay, so what is logical form? That's a very deep philosophical question, and if you, after reading through this, remain unclear on it, one of two things might be true. One, you might not understand as much as you should understand, and you can study it again. But another possibility is that the notion itself is not made clear enough in this book. And I'm just here gesturing at the fact that you can do this very serious philosophy of logic, reflecting on the concept of logical form. So there are debates among professional logicians about what logical form amounts to, what it consists in, what criteria to use to distinguish what we call logical words from other words. But in this introductory course, we will be talking a little bit about that criterion, but mainly we'll just be giving you a sense of how you might go about articulating a logical form or getting at a logical form. Excuse me. In this course, Units 1 to 9 is the topic of the first two exams. Exam 1, Units 1 to 6. Exam 2 is on Units 7 to 9. Both those exams, all those units are on sentential logic. And in sentential logic, logical form will be one thing. We'll be having one analysis of logical form. In Units 10 to 16, Units 1 to 9, sentential logic. Units 10 to 16 are on predicate logic, or equivalently, another name for it, quantificational logic. And logical form will be different. A different set of logical words, different analysis of sentences themselves. We'll be getting into analysis of sentences. So look forward to that. But for now, Klenk introduces you to the idea of logical form by saying, well, it's something like the basic blueprint of an argument, right? So if you look at, start with this second argument, you've got if Dan is Australian, then Dan is male. And then what have you got, right? There's a certain connection between elements for the various sentences in this argument, right? An argument is a set of sentences separated into premises and conclusion. Premises give you reason for believing the conclusion. Here you've got a statement. The first premise is an if-then statement, right? And what do we call this? The part that follows the if, that's the antecedent, right? Now we've got a conditional. The first sentence is a conditional. The second sentence, right, it's a conditional where the antecedent is Dan is Australian and the consequent is Dan is male. The second premise is the sentence, this very same sentence as the consequent of the conditional, right? Gotta learn all this lingo, right? The second premise of this argument is the consequent of the conditional, that is the first premise. And the conclusion of this argument, Dan is Australian, is the antecedent of the conditional, that is the first premise, right? So the form, so here's the thing. In sentential logic, what we do is we'll be elaborating more on this in Unit 2, especially, where you learn how to get at the logical form in complex sentences, or compound sentences. Those will be synonymous and defined in Unit 2. But what we do is to get at the form of just the first sentence. So arguments have forms, also sentences have forms, sentential form, right? A sentence can be simple, again, Unit 2 introduces you to simple and compound sentences. I think that's the title of Unit 2. Simple sentences, like Dan is Australian, just got a subject and a predicate, right? It is a sentence. What makes it a sentence? Whether it's true or false. Dan is Australian. Is something capable of being true or false? It is one or the other, right? So that's a simple sentence. And the form of the first sentence in this argument is if blank, then blank, where I have gotten to this form of the sentence by replacing the simple sentence, Dan is Australian, with a blank, and also the simple sentence, Dan is male, with a different blank. Okay? So I've abstracted out these simple sentences, leaving the logical form, right? A logical form, Klenk says, consists of logical words. What counts as logical words? You can read much philosophy of logic, debating the issue, but for us, there are going to be a specific set of words in sentential logic, first 9 units of the course. Words that are going to count as logical words are going to be if, then, if and then, making if-then statements or conditionals. The word and, right? So a sentence blank and blank, right? The word or blank, where in the blank you can put sentences. Not, as in not blank, so it is not the case that something, and if and only if, that we call the biconditional. All those words are going to count as logical words, right? And the logical words are not part of the content of the sentence, but rather of the form, okay? So the form of this sentence, of the first sentence, is, it is a conditional. It's if blank, then blank, right? Now, let me write if P, then Q, right? Where P and Q are sentential variables, right? Variables that take as substitution instances particular sentences, right? I'll elaborate on this in the next bit, but if P, then Q, and then you've got Dan is male, so that's the same as the consequent, so it's Q, and then therefore P, right, where we have the identity between the antecedent of the conditional and the conclusion, and the identity between the consequent of the conditional and the second premise. If P, then Q, Q, then P. You'll see over here, this one's going to be if P, then Q, P, then Q. But I'll come back and continue next part.